So, if you picture an interrogation room, right, like the classic Hollywood setup.
Oh, absolutely. The stark lighting, the sweating suspect.
Yeah, exactly. And, the examiner's just sitting there staring at those little mechanical needles,
Right. Violently scratching ink across that scrolling roll of paper.
catching them right in a lie. But, what if I told you that the machine sitting on that desk, it actually has absolutely no idea if you're telling the truth?
It really doesn't. I mean, it's not a lie detector at all.
Right. So, welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. Imagine, if you will, you're sitting at a table with us. We're poring over this stack of incredibly sensitive source documents today.
And these documents show exactly how um, intelligence operatives and, well, seasoned con artists exploit the machine's fatal flaw.
Yeah, and sociopaths too, which
Yeah.
we'll definitely get into. Because our mission for this deep dive is to basically dismantle the illusion of the polygraph entirely.
Right, looking at the hidden architecture of the machine.
Exactly. And the profound realization of what happens when a device built to measure truth actually just, measures something else entirely.
The pervasive myth of the polygraph is that there's some, like, universal physical mechanism that just flashes red the moment a lie leaves your lips.
Right, like a built-in Pinocchio nose or something.
Yeah, exactly. But the core premise from our source text tears that down immediately because the machine detects arousal, not deception.
Wait, so it's just looking for stress?
Yes, specifically the physiological signature of stress. We're talking about an elevated heart rate, increased respiration,
Breathing heavier, basically.
right, and fluctuating skin conductance.
Which is just a fancy way of saying how much your skin is sweating, right?
Exactly. Sweating, shifting blood pressure, all that.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that distinction, the fact that it measures stress and not truth, feels like the linchpin to the whole illusion.
It is. It's the entire vulnerability of the system.
I mean, it's like a car alarm, right?
A car alarm.
Yeah. Think about it. A car alarm goes off whether someone actually um, smashes the window with a crowbar to steal the stereo, or if a stray cat just happens to jump onto the hood.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Right. The alarm just registers the physical impact. It has absolutely no idea about the intent of whatever caused it.
That's actually a perfect analogy. The car alarm doesn't know if a crime is occurring, and neither does the polygraph.
Because it's completely blind to intent.
Totally blind, its entire architecture rests on this massive assumption. The inventors just assumed that the act of deception automatically triggers anxiety.
Which, I mean, for a lot of people, it does.
Sure. And they assumed that this anxiety produces a consistent, readable signature in the human nervous system.
But as the car alarm shows, anxiety and deception are fundamentally not the same thing.
No, they aren't. And that gap, that space between feeling anxious and actually telling a lie, that is the open door.
The door for anyone who understands how to manipulate the data the machine receives.
Exactly. You never have to become honest to pass a polygraph. You just have to become unreadable.
Unreadable.
Uh,
Wow. Okay. So since the machine is just looking for a spike in anxiety compared to your normal state, the most obvious workaround seems to be, well, hiding that spike.
right.
Like if you know the machine is looking for an anomaly, you just drown it out in a sea of other anomalies.
We see this extensively in the source material. It's a technique called contaminating the baseline.
Contaminating the baseline, how does that actually work in practice?
So every examination relies on calibrating the machine to the individual. The examiner asks control questions,
Okay, what kind of questions?
universally uncomfortable things like, have you ever lied to get out of trouble?
Right, because everyone has done that at some point.
Exactly. And they expect a slight physiological reaction when you answer it. That establishes your baseline of normal stress.
Wait, so since control questions are designed to be universally uncomfortable, the examiner is basically like handing you the keys to your own baseline.
They absolutely are.
So you just have to make sure your reaction to those specific questions is off the charts.
Yes. You introduce deliberate physiological disruption. You literally force your body to mimic severe anxiety during the control questions.
Artificially spiking the baseline.
Precisely.
The text mentions people literally biting their own tongues. Or wait, pressing their toes down onto a sharp tack hidden inside their shoe?
Yes, the tack in the shoe is a classic intelligence operative technique.
I'm assuming that's because the sudden pain triggers a biological response that looks identical to the anxiety of a lie.
Pain is an immediate stressor.
Uh.
So pressing on a tack causes this microscopic surge of adrenaline.
The fight or flight response?
Exactly. The sympathetic nervous system kicks in.
Eh.
Biting your tongue sends a pain signal that instantly spikes your heart rate and your galvanic skin response.
So to the examiner, it just looks like you're really stressed out by the question, have you ever lied to your boss?
Right. The machine reads it as a massive stress reaction.
But I noticed another tactic in the sources that doesn't involve physical pain at all.
The mental arithmetic.
Yeah. People performing complex, covert mental arithmetic, like counting backward from 1,000 by sevens.
While answering a control question, yeah.
At first, I was like, I don't understand how math equals stress, but I suppose it's about cognitive load.
It is entirely about cognitive load. When you perform complex, covert arithmetic, you are maxing out your brain's working memory.
I mean, if I try to do 1,000 minus 7 in my head right now, I'm already stressing out.
Right, it takes effort.
Hmm.
Your brain suddenly demands more oxygen and more glucose to process that intense load.
So your heart rate naturally spikes to deliver that blood.
Exactly. And you might even experience a slight imperceptible sweat.
Which is exactly what the machine is looking for.
To the sensors strapped to your chest and fingers, cognitive strain perfectly mimics emotional panic.
That is wild. So later in the interview, when the examiner hits you with the critical question,
The relevant question is,
the real reason you're in the chair, say you actually do have a genuine arousal response from lying, it just blends right in.
it gets completely lost in the mountain of artificial spikes you've already created.
The examiner looks at the chart, compares the lie to your chaotic baseline, and the machine just reads consistent.
Right, because you haven't lied any better than a normal person. You've simply sabotaged the instrument of measurement.
You broke the yardstick.
Exactly. You made the ruler useless.
Okay, but relying on a physical gimmick feels kind of risky to me.
How so?
Well, if I wince when I step on that tack, or if my eyes glaze over because I'm doing long division in my head, a sharp examiner is going to spot it.
That is a risk, yes.
Yeah.
Good examiners watch your body language closely.
Right. So there has to be a way to beat the test without creating chaos.
There is. And it's the exact opposite approach.
Yeah.
You eliminate the signal entirely.
Eliminate the signal.
Rather than building a mountain of artificial spikes, you create a perfectly flat plane. The text refers to this as emotional regulation, or radical calm.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay.
On the idea of just staying calm while lying. Doesn't trying to hide a lie usually make you sweat more? I mean, if I'm trying really hard not to look guilty, my internal monologue is screaming and my heart immediately starts pounding.
Right, your body knows you're hiding something.
Exactly.
Well, what you are describing is suppression, which is incredibly crude and usually counterproductive.
Suppression, like holding it in.
Right. Think of the classic psychological experiment. I tell you right now, do not think of a white bear.
Well, now I'm immediately thinking of a white bear.
Exactly. The moment you try to suppress a thought, your brain has to actively monitor itself to ensure you aren't thinking about it.
Which keeps the white bear front and center in your mind.
Yes. So fighting the biology just creates more biology. The act of suppression is highly stressful.
Oh, because you're engaging in a conscious fight against your own autonomic nervous system.
Exactly. Which actually increases sympathetic activation. You sweat more and your heart beats faster because that internal conflict feels threatening to your body.
So suppression makes you fail the test faster.
Usually, yes. True regulation, on the other hand, is the ability to not generate the threat response in the first place.
Wow. Okay, so how do you just not generate a threat response?
These sources detail how elite practitioners achieve this. Intelligence operatives, deep meditators.
They use breath control, right? Consciously relaxing their muscles.
Yes, very slow, rhythmic breathing.
Oh.
But the mechanism that fascinated me most was the deliberate dilation of attention.
Dilation of attention. Expand on that.
It's a powerful biofeedback tool. Think about being in a high-stakes interrogation. The room feels tiny, right?
Yeah, totally claustrophobic.
The examiner's face, the accusatory tone, the wire strapped to you, it all forces a narrowing of focus.
Like tunnel vision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Evolutionarily, when a predator is right in front of us, our vision tunnels. It's a survival mechanism.
So instead of focusing on the tiny room, the practitioner anchors their mind to something vast.
Yes. The text mentions visualizing the expanse of the sky or the deep ocean.
Just imagining something huge.
By focusing on something infinite and emotionally neutral, the immediate threat of the room shrinks.
Oh, wow. So the lie they are telling just feels like a drop of water in that massive ocean.
Right. It doesn't register as a survival threat anymore. They completely decouple their physiology from their cognitive output.
By maintaining that slow breathing and dilating their attention?
Yes, keeping the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system dominant.
So the stress architecture the machine is calibrated to detect never even activates.
The polygraph is waiting for a sympathetic nervous system reaction that simply never arrives. It's waiting for a spike,
Right.
but there's just a flat line.
That's incredible. But those first two approaches, sabotaging the baseline and radical emotional regulation, they're ultimately physiological workarounds, right?
Yeah, they are. You're hacking your own biology.
But the source text moves into a third approach that feels like sheer psychological gymnastics.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, because if manipulating your body is too difficult, you just manipulate reality itself by reframing the lie.
This is definitely the most philosophically destabilizing workaround we found in the research.
Destabilizing is the perfect word for it.
Because from the inside of the practitioner's mind, they aren't engaging in deception at all.
Wait, they don't think they're lying.
A skilled individual constructs an alternative internal narrative. They build a highly specific frame around the event.
Okay.
And within that self-constructed frame, the answer they give is genuinely true.
Okay, I was trying to map out how this actually works in practice. Let's take the example from the text where someone is asked, "Did you take the money?"
A classic direct question.
Right. So if I stole the money, I feel the guilt, I say no, and I spike the machine.
Normally, yes.
But if someone is reframing it, they're redefining the theft as an unauthorized loan or maybe a necessary redistribution of resources. But to pull that off, do they have to build an entirely fictional backstory? Like mentally drafting a repayment schedule so their brain truly believes it was a loan?
That is precisely the level of cognitive architecture required. You cannot simply pretend it was a loan.
You can't just tell yourself it was.
No, you have to inhabit the reality where it is a loan. If your brain fully commits to the narrative of the repayment schedule, the cognitive dissonance disappears.
Because there's no friction anymore.
Exactly. The friction between what you believe and what you are saying is completely eliminated.
That's wild. Because the polygraph isn't detecting objective truth. It's detecting the friction of cognitive dissonance.
Right. It measures the physical cost of holding two conflicting realities in your head.
So if you align your speech with a newly adopted self-deceptive belief, the friction vanishes.
And the signal flatlines. It exposes a massive loophole in the whole concept of a lie detector.
If you have entirely convinced yourself of a falsehood, is it still a lie?
The machine says no. The machine registers a truthful statement because your nervous system is not experiencing the stress of a lie.
I mean, a judge and jury would vehemently disagree with that.
Oh, without a doubt. But the autonomic nervous system cannot adjudicate the law. It only responds to your internal perception of reality.
That elevates this whole deep dive from like a technical manual on beating an interrogation into something much more profound.
It really does. We're looking at what the text calls an ontological failure.
Ontological failure. Break that down for us.
Well, the creators of the polygraph believed they were building a technological solution to a biological problem.
Right. Just catch the physical signs of lying.
They thought if they just got better sensors, more sensitive algorithms, tighter chest straps, they could isolate the truth.
But the failure isn't in the tech.
No, the failure is ontological, meaning it relates to the very nature of being and reality.
Because the machine assumes truth is a fixed, objective state.
Yes, a solid, immovable thing that the body inherently recognizes and will eventually betray if you try to obscure it.
But the relationship between consciousness and what we hold to be true is incredibly fluid.
It's extremely fluid. Truth isn't just a binary switch in our biology. Think back to the populations who naturally pass these tests with no training whatsoever.
Right. The sociopath connection.
Exactly.
The text explicitly points out that psychopathy scores correlate inversely with polygraph detection rates.
Yes, the higher you score on the psychopathy scale, the less likely the machine is to catch you lying.
Which is terrifying, honestly.
It is. But we have to look at the mechanism behind that correlation. A person who lies fluently without any stress doesn't just have a naturally relaxed disposition.
It's not just that they're chill people.
No, they have a biological structure that experiences deception as cognitively unremarkable.
Because they lack a conscience, they don't feel moral self-betrayal, so there is no threat response triggered in the amygdala.
Exactly. To them, lying isn't a high-stakes survival event.
It's just morally neutral information transfer. It's like giving someone directions to the supermarket.
Yes. The machine is built on the premise that moral self-betrayal will be registered as a threat by the body.
Wow.
So if you possess no moral conflict regarding deception, you are basically invisible to the censors.
It feels like the thesis of the entire source document. I mean, the polygraph is not a lie detector. It is a guilt detector.
A guilt detector, that's exactly what it is.
It only catches people who believe, somewhere deep down in their bones, that what they are doing is wrong.
It relies on your own sense of morality to hang you. It's a psychological tool, leveraging human conditioning, wrapped up in the aesthetic of a scientific instrument.
Weaponizing your own conscience against you.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the final, haunting conclusion of the text, because it explores this idea of the somatic ethics implication.
Yes, somatic meaning of the body.
Right. If we view our bodies not just as biological machines to be hacked or managed, but as truth-telling fields, like places of embodied integrity.
Then the entire dynamic of the polygraph flips. It ceases to be an interrogation tool and becomes a mirror.
A mirror.
It asks a deeply uncomfortable question of the practitioner. What have you trained your nervous system to feel neutral about?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Because every time someone successfully reframes a lie, or suppresses their arousal, or meditates through a falsehood to beat the machine, they are incurring a cost.
The source text calls it a desensitization process. You are actively lowering your own internal detection threshold.
You are overriding the biological signal of your own conscience.
Yes, and every repeated betrayal makes your own internal knowing slightly less legible to yourself.
So overriding your body's signal isn't some ultimate victory over authority.
Not at all.
It's actually a quiet tragedy. You are slowly dismantling your own internal compass.
You might walk out of the interrogation room having beaten the examiner, but you've lost a piece of your own embodied integrity in the process.
Because that physiological feedback loop, the one that warns you when you are out of alignment with your values, it becomes muted.
You slowly forget how to feel the truth.
That's heavy. I mean, the physical machine sitting on the desk can clearly be fooled.
Very easily.
You can bite your tongue, you can stare at the sky, you can construct an elaborate fictional spreadsheet in your mind to justify a theft.
You can do all of that.
But the deeper instrument, that gut instinct, the part of you that knows the truth before your conscious mind even formulates the words, that is much less easily managed.
And much more valuable.
Exactly. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought for you to mull over. The next time you find yourself telling a harmless lie, don't worry about the polygraph. Pay attention to your own body.
Notice what happens inside.
Notice if your heart rate jumps, if your breath catches, or if your stomach tightens. Is your internal baseline shifting? And more importantly, what happens to you if, one day, it eventually stops?